Welcome back to Discovering Life After 50 with Yvonne. This is, I actually don't know what episode it is. I've kind of lost count. But I can't believe it's Sunday again already. I'm going to stop saying that my channel is late again because it's late again. I've done 21 extra hours in the bar this weekend, which is quite a lot on top of a full-time job. But I'm not complaining. Far from it. It's gathering me pennies to turn into dollars for my Nashville trip. So I can't really complain. To go and have a right good sneeze to myself there. So what's been happening this week? Well, there's been quite a lot happening this week, to be honest with you. And I think mental health has been quite a big topic this week, and the lack of resource. And I'm not talking about in the wig world or in, although yep, included, but by and large, just in general, the lack of support that's out there. That I've had numerous discussions this week over the weekend with different individuals just through the working in the bar, and people like to talk, and it's quite scary. The lack of resource is quite scary, I have to say. And then we kind of compared it to back in the day. And back in the day, there was no resource. For anybody that's not watched the channel before, if you go back a few episodes where I talk about losing my parents, and some of the aftermath of that, there was no nothing. There was no mental health. There was no mental health team. There wasn't even a social worker. So, and nowadays, like 45 years later, you would expect that would have changed dramatically. And to be fair, it probably has. In fact, there's no probable about it. It has. There is a hell of a lot more recognition out there for children in grief. I can't speak about adults. I'm not speaking about adults. I can only speak about my own experience. And children in grief for something like that need help. But then when you look at the adult mental health, I often ask myself and wonder, is it the times that we live in that have made the mental health in this country worse than it's ever been? Or is it social media that's making it worse than it's ever been, or has it always been as bad? Because even when you look at how the older generation live their life and how they react to certain situations, the older generation still react to certain situations the same as they always did. And it was kind of like back in the day, and I'm going back, like I said, 40, 30, 35, 40, 45 years ago, it was a case of get on with it, pull your socks up, move on. And it's very controversial, right? I don't mean to be controversial. It's conversation and it's thought process. If you don't have mental health teams around you, if you don't have a mental health team around you, if something traumatic's happened, and it doesn't even need to be a traumatic situation, mental health has become massive in daily life, just in daily life. Is it because in the world we now live in? Is it because, most especially now, is it because the cost of living's massively increased and the salaries and the wages haven't kept up with that? Is it because it's become so much harder to live in this world that we are now in? Or, I don't know. Why is it as bad as what it is? Because, and I might be biased here, right? But there are major traumas that can happen in your life, right? All different kinds. From abuse of any sort, from grief of any sort. Probably those two, I would say, are probably your biggest. Abuse of any kind, whatever kind, And obviously there's varying degrees of abuse, but abuse is abuse, right? Regardless. And grief, no, grief is grief, right? But there's different measures of grief. There's a different type. You suffer a different grief when you lose your parents. You suffer a different grief if you lose a child, God forbid. You suffer different grief if you lose. It's all variance and levels of grief. How do you go over, or how do you navigate grief? And I can only speak for me, right? So 45 years ago, there wasn't any such thing as mental health. There was no empathy whatsoever from the immediate family. There was no support given. There was no sitting you down and having that shoulder to cry on scenario. It just didn't happen back then. As I've said in numerous episodes when I've discussed any of this, my adopted mum was the shoulder that I had, and my friends, of course. I had my friends, but I was young, and she was my main support, my adopted mum. So the question is, then it was really quite very much a case of pull your socks up and get on with it. You had to get on with it. So the question I want to ask, is that better? Is it better to be forced into a situation where you have to pack your grief into a bag and pick it up and go on with your life? Because no matter what, right? No matter what, whether you carry your grief around with you like a satchel, or whether you deal with your grief internally and learn to live with it, because basically that's what you need to do. No matter what you choose to do, you need to learn to live. You need to learn to live with that grief, the abuse, and get on with your life. Because the alternative to that is torture and suffering for the rest of your life. That's the way I see it. Now, I know this is controversial. I know I might be completely wrong, but just based on conversations I've had over the weekend with varying ages of people, right? I'm talking people in their 40s, people in their 50s, and people in their 70s. Excuse me. So, it's just the mind, the mind boggles. And I think about things like that quite a lot. Not morbidly, but I do think about things like that quite a lot. On if somebody asks me anything like that about how I navigated it, how I survived it. And we all survive things in our own way. We do somehow manage to pick that bag up and move on with our life, right? Some unfortunates don't, because they just can't. And that whole, I think the way I deal with it is, I believe that when I go, then we reunite. Right? I hold on to, when I go, we will reunite. Now, whether that happens or not, well, I'm never going to know that until I go, right? It's not as if somebody's coming back to tell me, by the way, you're right. So that's what I choose to believe, right? I choose to believe when I go, and I choose also to believe that neither my mother nor my father, nor my adopted dad, by the way, who's over there with my mum and dad, would ever expect or want me to be miserable for the rest of my life. They just wouldn't. So I choose not to be miserable. Does it affect me? Absolutely. Does it affect me? Have I got PTSD? Probably. I just manage it really well. I learned to manage my own emotions very well from a very young age. Prior to my mum and dad, during my mum and dad, after my mum and dad, the whole life has just taught me to manage trauma of any kind, no matter how little or large, of any kind. It's just, life's taught me how to manage that in order for me to live my life the way I need or want to live my life. I've moved on. 2 years later, I was married. No, 4 years later, I'm slight exaggeration. 4 years later, I was married. A year after that, I had a kid. a year and a half, nearly 2 years actually, after that I had a kid. And, well, if you bring children into the world, then they become your focus, right? They become that reason to move on with your life and get on with your life and do good, do as best you can in life without. I just didn't want to drag. I didn't want to drag my grief in a bag behind me for the rest of my life. Do I still feel it? Do I still suffer it? Do I still think about it? Yeah. But it doesn't. Does it upset me sometimes? Yeah, absolutely. I could quite literally sit down of a night and break my heart. But I choose not to do that. I choose to live my best life, or as the best as a life as I can, put it that way. I'm not loaded. I don't have pots of money to go and do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. I live a basic, normal, mediocre life that more recently has branched out into social media. I've got this account, I've got the podcast, I've got TikTok, and I've very recently just kickstarted my Facebook page. I've not loaded anything on it yet. I've literally just opened it and got my logo out there. That's something that I've just not had time to focus on it. But it's happening, and I will be focused on it because the early days of my YouTube page is going to largely revolve around Nashville, my trip to Nashville. And that page, I think, I'm kind of nearly certain that I want that page to focus on the wig. So, like, for example, like a day in the life of Tamara scenario, and make it about the wig wearing, not the maintenance of the wig, not the fibre, not, although that will be in there. I mean, it's got to be in there. If you're a wig wearer, then it all comes together, doesn't it? It's a full package deal. So, wait a minute. So, it's a package deal that'll all get involved and it'll evolve and it may change. But in the first instance, I need to kickstart it. I was planning to do it tonight, but fast running out of time again. I've just had my dinner. I just loaded a couple of things for TikTok, and then I was like, I need to record my podcast, my own personal podcast. We released episode 10 of the 2 weeks today. I absolutely love that podcast. It's one of my favourite things in the world to do, and more than likely because I've got a sidekick. It's much more fun when you're co-aligning with someone else who co-aligns with you. And we do very much feel and think in the wig world very much the same way, but two very different individuals. So the whole mental health thing for me, maybe you could pop it in the comments, what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you see something else that I can't see? Oops. Something else that maybe I've missed or I can't see, but I can only go by my own experience. And my own experience has taught me to drag your socks up and get on with it. Because the alternative is you don't survive. You just don't survive. You exist. If you exist in the world of grief, or if you exist in that world of abuse, or whatever the scenario is, right? And I'm only speaking for me, I'm not speaking for anyone. Everybody's entitled to do their own thing. But for me, I refused to exist and live my life daily based on my actual experience. Because a lot of my actual experience isn't something that I, 1, wanted to emulate, 2, wanted to repeat, 3, wanted to put into or instill in my child, my son, who is now 39 years of age, and I hope I've not instilled any of that in him. He's a pretty well-rounded man. He's living his own life. He's got his own issues. He's got gambling. Well, he's 2 years pin. He's reformed, which I'm so proud of him for doing. It's such a hard thing to do. As we all know, addiction's no easy to beat. But I like to think I've created a well-rounded human being, and he's a very kind, honest, well, he's honest when he's not gambling. He's a very kind and caring human being. And I could never ask for any better than that. All I ever wanted for him was to be kind and caring and honest. And he is honest when he's not gambling. And that's all I can ask for. And the conversations that have been floating around for quite a while now, or in the mental health scene, are, to be honest with you, they're pretty scary. It scares me that there's so many people out there, and I'm talking in the hundreds of thousands, I have no doubt, people that can't or don't know how to navigate grief or abuse or without real support. Because there's got to be hundreds and thousands of people out there as well that don't have real support. You don't need to do anything, but from my experience, I felt like I had no choice. I felt like it was do or die. It was live or be killed, basically. And I chose to live. Have I had moments where the brain has wandered? Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. But you know, only from up to my early 20s, maybe getting into my late 20s, I would say those thoughts and any thoughts like that have never not entered my head. I chose to make it work for me. I chose to make life, and by the way, life's not a bundle of joy, and it never will be. But I chose to make the best of what I had, and I chose to at least try. I've probably failed dismally in a lot of occasions, but I chose to live my life and try and make my parents proud. It's just, I don't know, I just see humans falling into a big black abyss and finding no way out. And that's terrifying, you know, because the help's not there. The resources aren't there. And if this carries on, and if the whole situation with the world carries on, which I'm not going into, then I fear for all of us. But yeah, if you've experienced grief, or if you've experienced any mental health disorder that you're struggling to deal with and you're not getting the resource, what do you do? How do you manage it? As a human being, how do you manage it? Adults only, please. So you're an adult. How do you manage it? This is how I've managed it. And am I a well-rounded human? Well, that's not for me to say, is it? I like to think I am. I like to think I'm a decent human being. I like to think I wouldn't harm my hair on anybody's head, which I wouldn't. I like to think I'm generous and kind. I like to think I'm all the good things in life. Have I made mistakes? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, yes I have. And I've probably paid a heavy price for some of them. I have. But by and large, at 59 next month, there's only a couple of things that if I was to look back, there's only a couple of things I would change. Decisions that I maybe would have made differently if I'd have known the outcome. And I dare say we've all got that. But I choose to live my life as best way I know how and as best I can. I nearly let out a major yawn there. That just shows you how tired I am. Anyway, I'm going to let it go there. I'm going to wind up because that's 19 minutes. I don't really like them surpassing 20 minutes unless there's a real need. So if you've never watched one of my episodes before, I'm Yvonne. This is Discovering Life After 50, which could mean anything and everything. It could mean hair loss, which I've got. It could mean wearing wigs, which I've got. It could be menopause, mental health, childhood memories. It could be anything. Anything at all. This channel is a diary for me to leave my grandkids and my son. That when I part this world, one would hope and pray that they're all still going to be here and they've got a diary of me. Just to, I don't know, just to let them remember and maybe see a part of who I was that they don't see. And no, family don't always see who you really are. And this, I hope, allow them to see who I really am. I'm a decent person. So if you've never watched one of my episodes before and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's free of charge, and switch on your notifications so that next time I launch an episode, it'll notify you that it's there and available. And I'll catch you all next week. That was a wee bit different, wasn't it? Have a good week.